Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome to today's episode of the Mystic's Path podcast. So, today I'm going to answer a question that I have been asked a lot recently. And that question is, how do you know when it's your guides talking to you and not your own mind? Okay? So I get this question all the time. How do you know that it's your guides communicating with you and just not the voice of yourself in your head? Okay. So before we speak into this topic, I want to preface this with we all receive information in slightly different ways. Okay. So for me, with my human design, so if you don't know much about human design, I highly recommend looking at your human design, looking at what type you are, and also how you receive information, okay? So for me, when I receive information, it comes literally directly through my channel. So through the crown of my head and into my brain, okay? So that can be great, but it can also be confusing sometimes because the messages I get are in my own voice and they're coming through my own channel into my head. So I've had to do a lot of work on that over the years of being able to notice the subtleties, like very fine energetic subtleties between my own mind and that of my guides or my higher self, okay? But for some of you listening, you will receive intuitive information in different ways. So you may feel it like coming through your heart space. You may feel it more as a feeling in the body, like a gut feel. You may hear something. You may actually hear your guides, like literally talking in your ear. Okay, or you may see things. So you may close your eyes and you might see a word or you might see a vision. Okay. So through the use of our clairs, we can also receive information. So whilst you're listening to this podcast episode, I invite you just to feel in of when you have received intuitive information, how has that come through for you? Has it come through like an inner knowing, a feeling, like a visceral feeling? Maybe you're speaking to a friend and you say something and you get goosebumps all over your body. This is like a confirmation of truth in whatever is being spoken. Maybe you've had visions, or maybe you hear things in your head. Maybe you hear things through your ear. Maybe you feel something in your heart. So that's what I want to preface today's podcast episode with, because I'm going to be speaking from my own personal experience. That may not resonate for some of you, but for some of you it will. It depends on how you individually receive information through your channel. Okay, so over the last, I don't know, I would say 12, 13 years, I guess my trust in my channel has been strengthening, and my ability to receive information from my higher self and guides has really amplified, which is great because this is the work that I do, right? So I need my channel to be clear. So many of you will know that one of the first ever like super strong downloads I ever received was when I was in India. And I was on a 2-week trip. I was working in corporate back then and I was on a holiday, and I received this message and it literally just dropped into my brain. You should do yoga teacher training. Now, this made no logical sense whatsoever. Like literally whatsoever. I was like, I don't want to be a yoga teacher. I don't want to do a yoga teacher training. It literally just made no sense, right? So this is one sign for you to be pretty sure that you're receiving external psychic information, because if it doesn't make sense to your logical mind, then it doesn't make sense to your logical mind, right? So that means that it's probably some spiritual information, intuitive information coming through for you that your logical mind can't possibly understand. Okay, so back when I received this download to do my yoga teacher training, I was like, I don't want to be a yoga teacher. So why would I go and spend 3 months training to be a yoga teacher and investing, £3,000 to do that? I don't want that. I don't want to be a yoga teacher. But this message just kept coming through. And when we receive messages from our guides, those that are really supporting us on our journey, these messages come through really softly. They come through as an invitation, as a nudge. because our guides know that we have free will on this planet. We can say yes, we can say no, we have choice, and not many planets in the universe actually have that law that applies to them. So as humans, we can choose. We can choose whether we do something or we don't do something. We can choose whether we follow our soul path, fulfill our soul mission, or whether we don't. We always have choice. And that's one of the beautiful things about being a human. Can also be a challenging thing, right? So the reason that I knew that that was my guides that were ushering me to do my yoga teacher training was because it really felt like it was a choice. You know, it was like an invitation, and it felt very soft, and it kept coming through as a gentle whisper of like, do your yoga teacher training. Okay. So what I ended up doing, and this is so lol, I ended up applying logic to say yes. So what I did was I was like, okay, if a yoga teacher training, I think it was £2,800 to do the training. I was like, okay, £2,800 to do the training. Back 11, 12 years ago, it was about £10 to do a yoga class. So I was like, okay, if I do my yoga teacher training and I learn how to do a yoga practice, like I can do an hour class, that means that I can roll my mat out anywhere in the world for free and do a yoga practice. So I was like, okay, I need to do that 280 times because 280 times 10 would be £2,800. I was like, if I do that 280 times in my lifetime, then it will be a good investment and I'll have saved money. So you can see how logical I was. Like, I wasn't just going to trust this voice. I was like, okay, I'm going to apply some logic to it. Does it make sense for me? Does it make sense financially? And when I saw that it did make sense from a logical perspective, I was like, okay, great, I'm going to do it. And then I did it. But over the years, because I've had the experience of saying yes to these intuitive messages and then having, a beautiful experience or something, beautiful that's come from that yes, I now trust my channel so deeply. If I'm told to do something or I'm invited to do something and I can feel that softness of my guides coming through and an invitation to do it, I know that it's going to be an aligned choice to do that for my soul and for my soul mission. Even if it makes no logical sense, even if it's an investment that doesn't make sense or is going to stretch me or is going to really make me very uncomfortable, if I feel that gentle whisper that's like, this is the right thing for you, then I trust that over my logical mind now. Okay. So for you who is listening right now, is there anywhere in your life right now where you are feeling this intuitive guidance coming through for you and you're in resistance to it? Because my invitation for you is to surrender and actually to spend a lot of time in meditation, because when we can still down the mind and go into the deeper brainwave states, that's when we can really receive a lot of clarity where perhaps we feel confused, okay? And I've had this experience many times in my life where I'm going to make a huge life-changing decision, whether it's breaking up with a partner, whether it's moving to another country, just huge decisions that I can feel will monumentally change the path of my life. When I drop into meditation, perhaps for an entire weekend, literally closing down my phone and just spending a lot of time sitting with myself and staring into space and meditating, that's when the clarity comes underneath the noise of the mind. Okay. So that's just an invitation and some advice for any of you who are navigating that right now, where you can feel there's a bit of a battle happening between your mind and your heart. Okay. So let's just speak into that quickly. So in my understanding and in my experience, the mind is often where the ego is running the show. Okay, so the ego is the part of us that wants to keep us safe, wants to keep us attached to our identity, our personality, who we believe we are in the world. The ego wants to protect that at all costs. So if we're ever making a decision that is going to put the ego in an unsafe space or an unknown territory, the ego is going to get really, really loud and it's going to try and override the soul. Okay? There are pros and cons to the ego, okay? And we, again, are one of the only species across the universe who have an ego. So we have this experience of having an ego and our soul. And the ego is not all bad, okay? Like, I know the ego gets a bad rap, but the ego is actually our drive, it's our determination, it's our will to succeed, and it's that energy and force that like helps us take those big aligned actions, okay? So really what we want is for the soul and ego to work together in harmony, and the soul guides the ego, okay? But what often happens is the ego, its number one priority, as I've already said, is to keep us safe. Okay, so this is important for us, right? Like imagine living in a jungle and you've got like tigers and I don't know, bears, and you've got dangerous things around you, poisonous snakes. Your ego needs to be protecting you so that you can survive. But we don't live in these kind of conditions anymore. Most of us don't. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably not living in the jungle. But because the ego's role is protection and to keep us safe, it will do that in all areas of our life, okay? So if something feels unknown, the ego will raise the red flag and be like, wow, 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 unsafe, okay? But often it's just because it's the unknown and it doesn't know that space yet, okay? So this will often happen when we receive intuitive guidance from our soul, okay? Because our soul is here to fulfill particular missions, to do particular things in the world, to guide us in particular directions, and those directions are really supporting us to experience soul growth, expansion, contribution, and do what we came here to do. And sometimes, we might be guided to leave a partnership or move countries or leave a career or start something new or do something that feels so scary. But our higher self and our guides know what's on the other side of that. So if we can lean into deeper states of trust and surrender and take this aligned action and listen to the voice of our soul and our heart, then we'll move closer towards the things that are truly meant for us, even if it feels very scary to take that leap away from the safety of the known. And what's crazy is often the known comfort zone we're in is not actually comfortable at all. If we're in a dysfunctional relationship or an unloving relationship, it's not comfortable. If we're in a career that we hate and is sucking our soul, it's not comfortable. If we're not doing the things that we know we're meant to be doing in our personal business, it's uncomfortable. If we know we're in a country that does not feel good for our energy and is depleting us, it's not comfortable. But because it's our comfort zone, our ego feels safe there, okay? So, just wanted to speak into the difference there. The ego usually takes up a lot of space in the mind. So if the mind is very chatty and there's a lot of fear happening, that is likely to be your ego. The ego also judges. So if you're ever in any kind of judgment against yourself or others, that's ego, okay? Then the soul, I find in my experience, the soul really sits around the heart space. Like that's usually where I feel the soul energy coming through. But obviously your higher self is like beyond you and can kind of channel through you. So you may experience intuitive soul, higher self wisdom in different ways. But in my experience, when our soul speaks to us, it's in a much softer, more gentle way. And when our guides speak to us, it's the same. So if you ever have the experience of something shouting at you quite aggressively, please be very mindful of that, because that is not the way your guides will communicate with you. Your guides might get loud and be like, come on, Bridget, do the thing we're telling you to do, but they're never going to come through and shout into your channel, okay? I've had this experience many times and it's very scary and it's disconcerting, and now I have an agreement with my guides. Please never, ever, ever come through in a shouty, aggressive way. Like that's the rule. but they wouldn't come through like that at all anyway. But I made this agreement so that I knew when it was the voice of my guides and maybe, or the voice of something which was actually not operating for my highest good. Okay, so let's circle all the way back to this question. How do you differentiate between the sound or the voice of your guides and your own mind? Because this is a question I get a lot. I talk about, my guide said this, my guide said this, my guide said this. People are like, how do you know that it's your guides? So the most obvious thing for me is that when my guides come through, they're telling me something that I would not think. I would not create in my own mind. So an example of that would be the one I've already given, you should do your yoga teacher training. I knew that was no way coming from my own mind because I did not want to do a yoga teacher training, right? And then over the years, there's been other things. Like when I was living back in the UK in 2021, my guide said to me, you need to leave the UK by the first week of September and move to Thailand. And it was very clear that was exactly what I had to do. And they even gave me like a cutoff date. I think it was like the 7th of September. They were like, you have to have moved by the 7th of September. And the reason for that was because that was like the peak time of the vaccination rollouts, and COVID was kind of like really alive right then. And what I was witnessing was a lot of healers that I knew of were getting quite severe vaccine injuries. And it was impacting the way they were able to channel energy. For example, I knew a Reiki healer, she had the vaccination, and then she had all this pain and tingling down her arms, and she wasn't able to do Reiki anymore. So my guides were pretty clear with me, you are not allowed to have the vaccine because of the impact it could have on your energy system. So that was the guidance I received. And they were like, you literally need to leave the country. Like, you have to leave the country. Otherwise, things are going to get very, very difficult for you, very challenging for you. For those of you who don't know, my mum and my sister work in the pharmaceutical industry. So my mum is actually retired now, but my mum used to work on clinical trials, production of vaccines, drugs, etc., etc. And my sister also does the same. And my sister's company were actually working on the COVID vaccine. So my mum and my sister work in the pharmaceutical industry, and my dad and my brother are both scientists, okay? So my family were very pro me having the V, and my guides were like, no. And honestly, from a human perspective, it probably would have been easier for me and my life just to have done that. But my guides were like, under no circumstance can you do that, okay, for you personally. So they said, you have to leave the UK and you've got 4 weeks to do it. And at this point in time, I had just moved. I'd only been living back in the UK from Australia for a few months. My financial situation was really, really not great. And I knew that I needed £10,000 extra to make this trip possible, to make this move possible to Thailand. And I remember talking to a friend of mine, and I feel really emotional with this. It's interesting. I remember speaking to a friend of mine and I said, I've received this intuitive guidance that I need to move to Thailand in 4 weeks, but I can't do that right now. Like, I literally can't do that. And she was like, you can do anything. What do you need to make that happen? I was like, I need to make £10,000. So for those of you in Australia, that's $20,000. I need to make that in 4 weeks. And I don't have a job that I go to. Like, I'm running my online business. And I'd never made that kind of money in a month before. And she was like, okay, do it. And I was like, what do you mean? She was like, just do it. So I anchored into the deepest state of trust. And I was like, if my guides are telling me that I need to make this move, then I also trust that the universe has the avenues to make it possible that I can generate £10,000 in 4 weeks. And what was crazy was within a week, I think I'd signed a private client. And then I launched a mentorship program, and within 3.5 weeks, I'd made £9,300. And then I sold my car for £700. It was like a pretty old banger. And I was like, oh my God, I actually did it. And of course, because if the guidance is coming through from my guides and they're saying, you need to do this for the highest good of you, for the highest good of your clients, for the highest good of the collective, then there's always going to be an avenue for that to happen, always. So even if you receive guidance that you think, this is so far stretched, like this is such crazy guidance, like I don't know how I'm going to make this possible. A good example of that would be like moving to another country, right? I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I trust that if the guidance is coming through for me to be doing that, and I can feel in my heart that that is truth, then it's all going to happen perfectly. Okay? So that's just like another example, like another extreme example of my guides coming through and being like, boom, you need to do this. And now more recently, over the last few years, it's just very obvious for me when it's a message from my guides and when it's my own thoughts. And I'll even ask sometimes, like, are these my own thoughts? And I'll receive an answer on that, yes or no. Like, yes, this is you, or no, this is not you. So to fine tune your connection with your guides, here are the things you need to do. Okay. Meditate. Most of us have ongoing thoughts 24/7. Okay. And this was definitely me before I started meditating, just so you know. Like my brain was just in overdrive, constantly thinking. Like the thought of having like a minute with no thoughts was just like incomprehensible. But when I started meditating, what meditation does is it allows you to process your thoughts every single day. It's like taking a shower for the mind and creating all of that space. So sweeping out all of the dust, all of the dirt, so that you have a clear channel. And then when the channel is clear and you have this space where maybe you won't even have a thought for like 30 seconds or something, that is when it's so much easier to receive guidance from your guides, if you receive it through your channeling that way. And a lot of us will receive it in that way. So that is the number one. If you're not meditating every day for at least 20 minutes and you want to be communicating deeper with your guides, you need to be meditating every day for at least 20 minutes. Okay. So that's number one, non-negotiable. Okay. And if you want to learn to meditate, then I invite you to join the Meditation Academy with me. That's my 5-week signature meditation course. It's a life-changing program and it will teach you to meditate, a tool that you'll have with you for the rest of your life. So return on investment on that, guys, is very, very high. Okay, so I'll pop the link to the Meditation Academy in the show notes for those of you who would like to come and learn the skill of meditation. So meditation is number one. Number two would be spending more time in nature, okay, without your phone. So going for long walks without your phone, going into nature without your phone, leaving your phone in the car, like just literally leaving your phone out of sight, out of mind for as long as possible, okay? And these longer pockets of time will create that space for your guides to come through. During COVID, I would go for walks that would be an hour and a half long. They were like a pretty big loop through the forest, and I would never take my phone with me. Maybe occasionally, maybe like, I don't know, 1 in 10 times I might take my phone, but generally as a rule, I wouldn't take my phone with me. And the first 20 minutes, my mind would be pretty chatty. I'd be processing lots of thoughts. And then as I started to get deeper into the walk and longer into the walk, that's when I'd start to receive intuitive guidance coming through my channel, because I'd created that space to receive. And just being in nature is just a fantastic tool to clear your energy so that it's easier for you to receive messages from your guides. The next thing would be spending slightly longer in the shower. This is kind of a silly one. But a couple of weeks ago, I was in the shower, I was washing my hair. And when you're in the shower, generally, it's a time where it's very interesting. I'm not sure exactly what's happening here, but if I was to tune into the energy of what's happening, you're in a state of being so present. You're not doing anything apart from cleaning your body. And you've got this experience of quite powerful water coming down onto your crown. Okay, so like I can see there's like a cleansing and dispersion that happens. So this is a time where for your guides, it's easier to drop information to you. Okay, so a couple of weeks ago, I was in the shower and my guides came through and they were like, you should run a course called Ancestry during Mercury retrograde. And I was like, whoa, cool. So I knew this was not my thought because this was just not something I would think. But my guides were like, you should do this. And then so I like was able to have some back and forth, like telepathic communication of like, okay, what does that look like? And they were like, do 6 ceremonies over 3 weeks. And that's it. Launch it on Monday. That was like all the information I received in the shower. So I was like, great. Got out of the shower, went and got my journal, opened my journal. And I was like, what are the ceremonies? They were like inner child ceremony, forgiveness ceremony, mother line ceremony, father line ceremony, shamanic journey, closing ceremony. I was like, cool. And that was it. And then on Monday, I launched that offering. So this is the power of being connected to your guides because they can really support you in your business, in your life, how to take aligned action. So here's my invitation to you. When you're out and you're out walking or you're in a supermarket or you're in, a shopping center, really just listen to your intuition of what you're supposed to do. There may be times where like you're walking somewhere and you're told like you should go in this shop. Listen to that. Okay. You might be walking down a street and you normally take a particular turning, but your guide's like, no, take a different turning today. Or you feel this intuitive nudge that you're supposed to take a different turn. Take the different turn. You feel that you are supposed to, join an online program or mentorship, or you're supposed to travel to a different country, or you're supposed to go and get a massage on a particular evening at a particular time. Just lean into these intuitive nudges of things that you think, that's interesting. I wouldn't normally do that. Or like, that feels like a strange thought to have. And you could even write these down in your phone. You could have like a notes app in your phone that is like intuitive downloads, and you can write those down and then maybe share like what happened when you listen to them. And then you will start to see life as a synchronistic miracle. You'll be like, oh, I was guided to do that. And then I met this person, or I was guided to do that. And then this experience happened. Okay. So this is my invitation for you after listening to this podcast episode, is to go and experience this and play with this in your life. Listening to the inner nudges, the inner guidance, the crazy thoughts that you're like, why am I thinking that? I would never think that. And then go and do the thing and see what happens. Okay. So this is how my channel works, how I receive guidance from my guides, how I can differentiate. It's definitely a muscle that needs flexing. And the more you flex it and listen to the guidance and, have beautiful experiences from listening to the guidance, the more you will trust that voice, okay, or those voices. So that is, a way to connect deeper with your guides and how to really differentiate whether it's your guide speaking to you, whether it's your own soul, whether it's your ego that's running the show. And my intention with this episode is that you are able to live a more soul-aligned life. Okay, so just a final reminder, when your soul and your heart are asking you to step into the unknown, to try different things, to say yes to something, or maybe even say no to something, and then you feel fear around that, the fear is the ego's reaction to the thing that you're about to step into. So this is why it's so important also to have nervous system regulation practices so that you can regulate yourself when you feel this fear come up and stay connected to your truth and stay connected to your heart, your soul, your higher self, and the messages from your guides. So I'll leave it there, my loves. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I hope this has been helpful. Oh, I'm also being told that many of you will receive guidance through your dreams as well. So that was obviously for those of you, some of you that are listening were supposed to hear that, because like literally That was my guides popping in and being like, also one more thing. So start writing down your dreams in the morning, because there is often guidance that comes through from our dreams as well. And if you want to learn more about working in the dream world, what dreams mean, astral experiences, then I have a masterclass on this called Dream Work into the Astral. So I'll pop that in the show notes as well if you're interested in that. All right, loves, I will close out and complete there. I hope you are having like an absolutely beautiful day, whatever you're up to. And just thank you so much for tuning into the podcast. I love having you here so much. Honestly, it's the greatest joy for me to sit down with my microphone and channel and record these episodes. Like, a lot of them are fully unplanned. I just hit record on my phone and on my microphone, and it's just feels like such a beautiful way to self-express. So thank you for just being here and receiving. So I'm loving you all deeply, and until next time, I will see you soon.